Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod. We have James Bates with us today. He is CEO, chairman, founder, board member. He's into private equity, artificial intelligence. He's a turnaround guy, an M&A guy. In Asia, we're going to talk about that. He's in Phoenix right now. I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. Overall, James is an accomplished CEO, and he's right now his main company that he's founder and CEO of is AdviNOW or AdviNOW Medical. It's a very cool company we're gonna get into. It's also not his first company, so gonna have fun today. He was also an advisor at a bunch of companies we're gonna talk about. Podpire is presenting that one. Podpire is my podcasting company. If you want to start your own podcast to generate leads, conversations, insights, you can go to podpire.com. We help you do that with AI, and we have a free masterclass and an ebook teaching you how to do that. James, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Hi there, Charles. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is James Bates. I'm the founder and CEO of AdviNOW Medical. I've been in the high technology field for 30 years. Currently, I run the world's only artificial intelligence company that completely automates all operational as well as clinical aspects of a medical practice. My previous life, I created the technology for self-driving vehicles. It was a billion-dollar business. Guys like Tesla, Daimler, GM, Toyota, anyone who does auto brake and auto steer used our products. Before that, in Internet of Things, partnered with people like Apple to make the Apple Watch, Nest for their thermostats. And before that, company named Silicon Labs, and we made the world's smallest radio frequency chips that use low-cost manufacturing techniques, and that's what's used in almost every cell phone in the world today. So I've had the opportunity to be part of a lot of different things, but today it's all medicine and revolutionizing that space.
Love that. Let's start with early James. So one thing that changed my life was a student exchange trip in Hong Kong. I had businesses back then, and it totally revolutionized my way of thinking, the culture shock, right? And the aftermath, which was major growth for me. Why have you thrown yourself in Japan, and what insights have you got from your time there?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to live in Japan for 12 years. After graduate school, I joined Bell Laboratories, which was part of AT&T back in the day. And they sent me to Japan, as a professional first. And at that point, I was a very young engineer, and I was working on the world's first digital cell phone chipset. So we made the first GPRS chipset that was ever developed. And one of our key clients was NEC and then Samsung. And those two guys, because I spoke Japanese, they wanted me in Japan to be able to interact with NEC directly and then support Samsung with questions. And since I was a designer of the product, I was like the in-between guy, if you will. Well, it didn't take, things evolve, and it didn't take it long before they decided to shut down the research and development done in Tokyo. They said it was too expensive. And then I transferred to business development. And it was a big decision to move away from design and go into biz dev, but turned out to be very good for my career. And I had the opportunity to take technologies from the labs, find key clients in Asia, and then define products that would use the key technologies, and had, with that, worked with key companies in China, Taiwan, Singapore, India, Japan, Korea. It was a phenomenal time, but it was great.
Because your education was in engineering, right? So an engineer still today, I must guess, like very much thinking in systems and so forth. And back then it was the dot-com boom, right? Why did you choose technology? Why not go into like more boring fields back then?
Well, as a kid, my dream was to be an inventor. So I had the opportunity, when I was young, to be responsible in my house to fix everything. My dad was at work most of the time, not in the house, and my mom, with 5 siblings, stuff would break, and my job was to fix it. And, we weren't very wealthy. So calling someone else to fix things was not an option. And that was what I did. And so I had the opportunity to fix cars, motorcycles, toasters, computers. Didn't matter what it is. Whatever it was my job to figure out how to fix it. Well, as I got older, I was like, man, I want to invent stuff. I want to do things. And so electrical engineering was just really the natural progression for me in school. And then as I was in graduate school, I had the opportunity to join the most premier research company in the world. At that time, it was Bell Labs. Today's comparable would be maybe Google Labs or something like that. But, OpenAI, we had, if you look at Bell Labs legacy, they did all the fundamental invention for internet IP protocol as an example. They did the fundamental research in radar. They did the fundamental research in laser and optical communications. I mean, you go back to almost all of our real inventions over the past 100 years, and Bell Labs was part of it. So I saw that, and that was my dream, and and so that's the direction I ended up going.
Yeah, Bell Labs was crazy. How do you justify their success and their approach to innovation? I believe it was like a very leveled culture, right, in which anyone could walk up to anyone, and there was a lot of collaboration.
Sure. Collaboration was definitely part of it. I think, with any company that's a monopoly, and back in those days, AT&T was a monopoly that was 100% regulated by the government. And through the regulations on that monopoly, the government required AT&T to spend a certain percentage of revenue in research and development. And so with that, I mean, tremendous amounts of waste, because there was lots of waste, but there's lots of smart people that want to just do research. And so in my interview with them, they actually put me in a room with Nobel laureates where we were debating the best type of silicon technology to use for radio frequency chips. And as a guy in graduate school, I'm sitting across the room from people who wrote textbooks that I studied.
Legends.
Yeah. So it was really, really exciting to be part of that. But ultimately, I mean, if you look at it from a pure altruistic standpoint, AT&T had money to burn, and they hired a bunch of smart people. Probably 80% of the money was wasted, but 20% invented wonderful things.
Yep, I very much agree. And I think just not only the open source NAS, but letting people do what they're passionate about, right? That's not seen a lot in nowadays companies. There's a bunch of other things, right? Like reuniting very talented people and having them sort of compete as well. When did you officially become an advisor and an investor? I see here Big Capital. I see that you were advised at a bunch of company at board member. When did you transition really from corporate world and working in corporate from advising and investing?
Yeah, in my previous company, which was Freescale Semiconductor, we sold ourselves to NXP. When I joined them, we were a $700 million business that was losing money. And 4 years later, when we sold, it was over $1 billion business that was extremely profitable, right? About 20% was being dropped to the bottom line. Through that experience of taking companies that are not functioning well and in helping them become profitable and execute and become leaders in their field, you learn a lot of things, and you learn a lot. You meet a lot of people. When we sold to NXP, I retired. It gave me a little bit more time to do other things, and that's when I founded my family office, which is a Big Capital. Worked on really AI trading schemes, which is Option Agent that you see there, and had the opportunity to really start advising and be on boards of other companies. And so it's really been over the last 10 years or so.
Right. And you said you grew up poor. What changed in you once you became very wealthy?
It's interesting that you're always at heart probably the same person you were when you were 12 years old. It's just what constraints you put on yourself, right? Ultimately. And so when you're young and you're poor, you have all these dreams about how I'm going to become super rich someday, and I'm going to have my private jet. I'm going to do all these things. But really what happens is, when you're poor, you're constrained. So your excesses don't become abuses because you don't have the capability to do excesses. And then when you become rich, if you aren't really constrained by your own morality or your own rules on your life, then excesses turn into things that are unhealthy. And so really I look at how I spend money or what I do today. It's really no different than what it was, when I was younger. I love to invent things. I love to work hard. I love to make a big impact. And I did then, and I still do now.
Yeah, and also I think when we're younger, we have stupid goals because we're not educated, right? We don't have like much data to know what the good life is about, right? And as we acquire wealth, hopefully we'll gain enough experience to have a better life or good life framework, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that it's money that gives you the ability to be introspective. I think it's more along the lines of being experienced and being mature and honest with yourself. If you have a framework in your life that kind of forces you, and religion does a really good job of that, forces you to be introspective, be understanding about who you are, about what the definition of happiness is, and about how you engage with the world, then you start to get a different perspective on what each experience means, and a different perspective on what happiness is, and a different perspective about what your goals want to be. And so I'm not so sure that money really has anything to do with that. Now, as you get older, and if you're focused and successful, money comes along naturally. If you are disciplined and if you have the right perspective in life, and you actually become mature.
Right. If you follow a list of 134 items on a very religious basis, very hard to get wealthy. But it's an obsession, right? And I think that cash, it buys experience and it buys data and possibly education to get smarter as well. So I love the Ikigai philosophy, right? So getting paid for doing stuff that you love and that is useful for people, which is what you're doing with AdviNOW, it seems. Why did you pivot it to health? Did you had an insight that we only had like one body of ours, and that health is fragile, and that became your number one mission to help people with that?
Obviously that's very true. But I'm not sure that was my driving force at the time. When I was working with my previous company, I had the opportunity to work on some really fundamental technologies for self-driving vehicles and for electric vehicles. And it was really great. And I felt that was impactful on the world. But when we sold the company and I retired, I started to look back and think, well, I've made enough money here where I could play golf every day, and just live off of the passive income. Or you dive in and do something else that is truly impactful. And, I like golf. I just don't like it that much, right? I can't play it every day. Need to do something else. And when I looked at the world at the time when I founded AdviNOW Medical, the Affordable Care Act, or the ACA, or Obamacare, as people may know it, had just passed. And half the United States hated the other half of the United States about healthcare, and hasn't really changed to this point today, 10 years later. But I didn't understand. I just looked at healthcare and thought, man, this is broken. We got to be able to do something. And this is one of the biggest issues of our time. And so my initial thought was just to buy some medical practices and learn healthcare through owning medical practices. But when I dove into the details of medical practices, I quickly realized that there's no medical practices that actually make money. Some of the doctors that
Interesting.
work in the medical practices make money, but the medical practices themselves are not profitable entities. And it was very surprising to me. There's so much money spent in healthcare, yet the business entities themselves don't make money. Hospitals don't make money. Medical offices don't make money. And so I took a step back and I thought, man, as a financial investor, owning a business that is low single digit profitability doesn't help anybody. So as I was walking away, I got to be good acquaintances with a guy who ran a chain of clinics, and he asked me to help him fix it. And when I dove into it and actually did a time and motion study on that clinic, what I realized is that physicians were only spending about 30% of their time actually doing their medical licensure work, which is diagnosing and treating patients. And the other 70% of their time was spent doing clerical work that had nothing to do with their medical licensure.
Yeah.
So that became really the opportunity and the passion. Doctors hate their jobs, patients have bad outcomes, and it doubles the cost of healthcare in the United States, having that broken system. And so using artificial intelligence and augmented reality, we could actually eliminate that 70% of clerical work that physicians spend their time on and allow them to work at the top of their license most of their day.
Love that. And tell me a bit more about the company. Is it a SaaS model? How many clients? And what's the AI component to it?
Yeah, so AdviNOW Medical, we use artificial intelligence to completely automate all operational and clinical aspects of a medical practice. So what does that mean? That means that a patient goes to the front desk. The AI engages with the patient directly, collects all the information. The front desk patient doesn't need to do it. Front desk person doesn't need to do it. Now, the front desk person is still there. We're not getting rid of that person, but they're not required to sit and collect information because the AI is collecting it directly. The nurse, everything the nurse collects is the AI is instructing directly with the patient if possible, or with the nurse to be able to collect the information. So the nurse doesn't need to remember all the protocols for all the different illnesses and all the different patients. They just have to follow the instructions and collect the information. Similar for the doctor. The doctor no longer needs to remember that, hey, Medicare, follow these protocols. Medicaid, follow these protocols. Oh, United Healthcare, follow these protocols. Oh, this is a patient, with diabetes, and, so we need to collect these things. So Medicare will pay us. Yeah, they don't, all of these crazy rules that have been put on doctors when they're doing their work, these become automated. And so now the doctor could actually just be a doctor once again. And that is what really our software is about. It's not about taking over medicine. It's not about eliminating doctors. It's actually about allowing doctors to be doctors once again.
I love that. What's the cost of that? And what's the challenge behind that business? Isn't selling to doctors hard?
So I've never met a doctor or a administrator of a practice that doesn't look at AdviNOW and say, wow, this is exactly what we need. Never had one that doesn't want to use it. It's super easy to sell, throw a rock, sign up 10 clinics. That's not the problem. The problem is that every medical practice is unique. Every patient has its own workflow. Every medical practice has its customized workflow, and every doctor within that practice has their own workflow. And so because AdviNOW is so comprehensive, doctors aren't going to really change what they do today. They want the system to conform to do what they do. Well, our system is very configurable to allow that to happen. The problem is our system is very configurable. So the physicians come back for continually wanting changes to our platform. Well, what we're doing today and what our next generation of the product gets released, mid this year, is that the AI actually does all the configuration for the medical practices. So really the friction for adoption is how difficult it is to configure the system so the medical practices can use it. But the beauty is next generation platform automatically configures itself. So somebody can just click a button, just like Dropbox. You want to sign up for Dropbox, you click a button, you enter your email, automatically you have an account. You really don't have anything to do. Just like AdviNOW, that's the same thing. So you click a button and you could automatically automate your practice without all of the onboarding burden.
Yeah, I love that. That's pretty incredible. Now let's hit the big philosophical question. Now that we have 6 minutes left, the healthcare system, it's about fixing what's broken. How could we change it to prevent these ills and these injuries from happening?
Well, the the healthcare system is really broken because of doctors who are more worried about not getting sued and not getting paid than they are for treating patients. And doctors hate that. They don't want to worry about getting paid and getting sued. What they want to do is actually treat the patients. I mean, I've met very few doctors that don't have good motives in what they do. But the system is set up such that they have to be very worried about everything they do. Else they don't get paid if they don't do it exactly right, or if they forget to ask one question and they get sued and they get claimed that they're, malpractice. And our system eliminates that. So basically, adopting AdviNOW fixes that whole problem in the healthcare system and allows doctors to be doctors once again.
Yeah, I see definitely a problem with the judiciary system that allows that. I think they're good intentioned people. I think they need to be held accountable too, but not to that degree. I think that the big problem here is that consumers slash people that get ill and show up to these clinics, they outsource their health to these people. Oh, I'm not responsible for my health, and if he breaks me, he breaks me. But I think people need to bring back that accountability to them and prevent these injuries and ills from happening. I think the worst thing to outsource in life is your health. Do you agree?
I mean, you definitely, there's, when you're sick, it doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how successful you are. When you're sick and it's over. And so taking care of your health is very important. I, I, I don't think that you can regulate and mandate perfection, right? That's just not possible. And so I don't believe that, although all of the payers and most of the payers and most of the regulatory oversight of the healthcare industry is bad intentioned. I don't think that it is. I think that it all has good intentions. But if you give a doctor 1,000 regulations and processes that they must follow, and then you change those processes every 6 months, it's impossible for that doctor to be up on everything. It's just impossible. Doesn't matter the training, doesn't matter how smart they are. They will never be perfect. And then when you don't pay them, or you put them in jail when they make a mistake, they just quit the profession. And that's the problem that we have today. And
Or
so
kill themselves. Suicide
yeah,
is a big problem
sure.
amongst doctors.
Yeah, and so this is where I think that the good intentions have destroyed the profession, and that's where AdviNOW Medical solves that problem.
How do you take care of your health as a CEO? How do you optimize your own body? What does a day-to-day routine slash habit looks in your life?
Well, I mean, I exercise almost every morning. I get up at 5 and either in the gym or on a hiking trail by 5:30, and for an hour and a half, and then start my day. And in general, it's really just kind of watching what I eat. I don't eat big lunches anymore as I get older. That's not possible. It's a salad, if anything, and just watch what you eat and make sure you exercise. Exercise is a key, right? The sedentary society that we have today, I mean, that really is the root. You could really abuse what you eat if you exercise a lot. But if you just don't exercise, then ultimately you have to limit what you eat. And even when you do that, your body's still not happy because it needs to move.
Yeah, I agree. Like in Ironmans, just see what they feed athletes, Coca-Cola, pretzel, and all that bullshit, but people still do them and they're super fit. But yeah,
Sure.
like once you're like a very high level and are hacking your health and your longevity, I guess like eating a decent or good food is always good. For example, instead of pizza, well, sourdough bread pizza, right? And stuff, hacks like that. AI, it's hard to keep up. How do you keep up nowadays with every new development that's happening? And how do you personally use AI to optimize yourself and your business?
Well, so I'm an expert in AI. I've been doing AI since before AI was cool. So from that standpoint, AI is infused in everything that we do. Our whole product, how we engage with clients, how we do questions. We built our own internal AI engine. How we onboard clients is all artificial intelligence. When I write reports, you take advantage of all the tools just for efficiency purposes. I don't think that anyone who understands the way technology is progressing expects artificial intelligence to not change what they do. And so it's just about keeping up on it, staying ahead of the curve. Because if you don't use artificial intelligence to improve your business, somebody else will. And then they'll either buy you or you'll go bankrupt. Right?
Agree. What's next for you? Any funding plans for this year? What are your goals?
Yeah, so AdviNOW Medical is in the middle of growing pretty dramatically. And so we are raising money. So happy to talk with anyone if they want, if you're an accredited investor and interested. But we're looking for growing to over $100 million in the space of just 3 years. So we're pretty excited.
Love that. That was James Bates. James, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so james.bates@advinowmedical.com is my email. Advinow.com is my email. And go to www.advinow.com or send an email to info@advinow.com and you'll get a response. So looking forward to talking with you.